What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gojo with Mike Golick Jr. That is me. With me, as always, a man who still maintains that these are prescription sunglasses, Brandon Newman. Brandon, what's going on?
Oh, nothing much, Mike. I just woke up, so I have myself on a pretty strong word pitch count. Let's go.
It's beautiful. I am full of tacos, which means my heartburn is activated, which means that I wish I was on a word count, but that's not how this podcast works.
Yeah, I would say over the holidays, I noticed and remembered how you wore your festivities on your face a lot. So that reminds me of that.
Yeah, Brandon, I figured you would appreciate this too. So last night with Dan Rubenstein and Ty Hildebrand, Ari Wasserman, and Andy Staples, I went on a national championship preview taco tour of Los Angeles, which seems right up your alley.
Wait a minute, you did it with the Andy Staples podcast and the Solid Verbal, like, combined?
Yes, so it was a combo podcast for them. Mina Kimes jumped in for a little bit. It was a whole family affair.
Damn, that's what's up. And they had tacos. They know how to get people to what word am I looking for?
Collaborate?
Collaborate. That's a good one.
Yeah, we went to Sonora Town, Los Gatos Tacos for Birria Tacos, and then Koji Barbecue, which, oh my God, if you are in Los Angeles and have a chance to eat those delicious, like, Korean barbecue style tacos, run, do not walk. That changed me as a man. I'm different than the guy you podcasted with yesterday.
I would say Korean barbecue in LA is it's different. It's different. So I can't imagine what a taco version of that must be.
Yeah, no, it was incredible. So, yeah, shout out to those guys. I don't know when that podcast will drop, but she's a doozy, and we do some football talk in there. We got a doozy today as well with some football talk in here. Great news out of the NFL that we can get to. Picks going into the weekend. We've got Ryan Nanny here, one of the co-hosts of the Shutdown Fullcast. You guys hear over on Fullcast After Dark as a part of our friends over at Meadowlark Media. And Ryan is also on a quest to appear on as many podcasts as possible, regardless of if he is qualified for them or not in 2023. And so we are trying to help him along on his journey here because we're people helping people, and that's what we're looking for, Brandon. Collaboration, more of that good stuff.
Yes, we want to continue to connect with people in 2023.
We do. Brandon, is this far away look in your eyes because you're getting ready for potty training this weekend? Is that still on the docket? You look like a man who is anywhere other than where his feet are right now, and I forgot that you told me about that yesterday.
Mike, the level of dadding that I've had to do recently. Yesterday I went to a tour of a school, a monastery school. I don't know if you guys are familiar.
You mean a Montessori school? A monastery is where priests go.
Well, this is where little priests go, apparently, Montessori. Because they lied everything that everyone has ever been there. It's like, oh, these are the Google people that went here. It's Beyonce. Did you know Reese Witherspoon went to a monastery? No, I don't know if Reese Witherspoon actually did, but I think Katy Perry did. But anyways, yeah, it's just it's another cult to be a part of, and I'm just weighing the options in my mind. Played soccer, tried to get soccer, or get Carter signed up for soccer. We're still in boxes, very much so.
Soccer's a good sport to play when you've moved and you're trying to make friends. That was the only time I played soccer as a kid, is we moved a bunch when I was young after Dad finished playing, and we played soccer everywhere long enough to make friends. I was one and done in every soccer season I was ever a part of and said never again after every soccer season I was a part of. Yeah, it was the friendship sport. That
actually explains a lot because that was my first sport. That was the first sport I loved. Obviously, a lot of kids' first sport, but I didn't really give it up. Like I never stopped playing soccer until the football coaches told me to. You know, but the reason I was actually far away, Mike, is as you began talking and doing the thing where you set up the episode, I realized I had not made my picks, and because of that, I was looking at the lines real quick. Because last week when I went 4-0, I made the picks as the show started. So I was like, all right, gotta hit.
Hey,
you know, it's a superstitious Athletes are.
Everyone's got a process, and when it works, you don't mess with the process. When it doesn't work, then you go back and tinker, then you fidget, then you do all the things. But when it works, you don't worry about the process there. So, Brandon,
thank you for calling me out on that.
No, it was more just a way for me to get you to talking about potty training and parenting. But
we realized Michelle's like, we're going to start it today, which was yesterday. She was like, we're going to start it today. No, she meant we're going to start it Friday. That's where I'm effed up. And I was like, Michelle, we don't even have a potty out of a box yet. We don't have it fixed in the middle of the room. We're not prepared. I'm going to go ahead and step in and do the daddy thing and be like, you know what? I don't think we're ready right now. Let's move potty training to Monday, which is what's going to happen. So this is the war stories will be told next week.
All right, there we go. Potty preview for next week's podcast, but it becomes a potty podcast. A potty
Also,
cast.
I thought about this. I need help, Mike. Michelle's read all these articles and listened to all these things, the Big Little Feelings. People, I'm sure some people know that, but if anyone, I thought this was a perfect way to get reviews and stuff for the podcast. If anyone has any advice, any young parents out there, any old parents out there.
Oh, damn. Larry, listen, say no more. At Gojo Show on Twitter, and also download, subscribe, rate, and review Gojo wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Leave it in the YouTube comments. DraftKings YouTube channel. Gojo with Mike Golick Jr. playlist. Comment advice for young parents getting ready to start potty training for the first time here. It is a massive endeavor. This community around our show has come through in the past in key moments like this. This feels like another one now. So we need you on this one. Brandon needs you on this one as we get set for the podcast next week. So thoughts and prayers aren't required. Yeah. Thoughts and prayers aren't required, but they are appreciated. We will look forward to your guys' backup on that one. We will look forward to Ryan Nanny on this podcast here. But Brandon, we looked forward to delivering this news all week long, and now we do get to deliver it on the front of Damar Hamlin, the Buffalo Bills safety who suffered cardiac arrest during Monday Night Football's game against the Cincinnati Bengals. It was as harrowing an experience as anyone watching or playing football has ever seen. And we are not out of the woods yet, but yesterday I think constituted the biggest and best update that we've received so far. According to the doctors at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center on Thursday, Damar Hamlin has awakened and shows, quote, substantial improvement in his recovery after that incident. One of the doctors, Timothy Piccs, said Hamlin is still considered critically ill and significant process is needed, but Hamlin's neurological condition appears to be intact. He was able to move his hands and feet. He was unable to speak, but he was able to communicate in writing, and Hamlin, even in writing, asked the doctors who won the game on Monday.
That was the anecdote that was like, oh, okay, everything is going to be okay. Not in a very super narratively Hollywood script way, but as football players, when you go down on the field, I feel like instinctually, regardless of the time has passed, that's where your brain is.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it got it. What a jarring experience to wake up in that way. And obviously, I can already hear the Pardon My Take guys saying football guy of the year, hands down, for that move there, now that we feel like the recovery is coming. But the line that struck me, I think, the most because of what that statement meant was the doctor saying, the doctor's response was, Damar, you won the game of life, meaning you have survived and you're back here now. But when they said it after, they said, not only are the lights on, but he's home. That response indicates he knows what's going on. He can't yet communicate it verbally, but was aware enough to remember that that's where he was then. And again, there's so much more, and the doctors talked extensively about the next steps they're looking for. He's still being assisted with breathing. There's still a bunch of other stuff, but all these signs indicate that this is a person that is capable of making the kind of recovery we've all hoped for. And man, it felt like everyone had been holding their collective breath on this for so much of the week. And so, God, what a bit of good news, man. Holy hell.
Huge news.
And the other part so there's a couple other things that stuck out in this. first and foremost, man, watching everybody involved in this process take care of everybody else has been really, really encouraging. Like, I know there's been all this like media scrum about people and what they've said and shit like that, but like I'm talking about the people that matter. Like listening to Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane and Josh Allen talk, like Josh Allen saying like, hey, listen, putting the helmets back on yesterday was good for us, but there are going to be some people that were in this process that are never going to be the same and never feel the same about this. And Sean McDermott saying, hey, it's not about me, but I also acknowledge when I need to ask for help and when I need to talk to a counselor, when I'm not okay. And Joe Burrow going out of his way to show grace, and Damar Hamlin's mother reaching out to, or Damar Hamlin's family reaching out to give words of condolence to T. Higgins, who's had his own different battle with all of this as the player on the other end of that hit. Like, we talk about the brotherhood in football all the time, but Brandon, you know this, one of the first phrases our old strength coach told us was take care of the people that take care of you. And this was that in the ways that you never predict you're going to need, but are so much more important than any way you could do that in or around a football team in normal circumstances. Like, this is the NFL fraternity, and this is the NFL and the brotherhood in the locker room on the fullest display I've seen.
Yeah, on the backs of the most traumatic thing that we've seen in a very long time for a lot of football players, anyone connected to the sport, especially connected to those two teams. We've seen a lot in American history that it's tragedy that really brings people together. And I think this was one of those instances where everyone in the football community, fraternity, Little League to NFL, put their arms around each other. And that was a really cool moment.
Yeah, it was, and it was a chance to have some different conversations about this and to reckon with all of those things that we talk about, the violence in the sport in a different way, and it's borne out a lot of productive conversations. When we had the conversation in the show, I hadn't listened to Mina and Dominique talk about it on the Mina Kimes show, and was the similar sentiment of, as we all grapple with this now in this one big moment, let's not forget it when we leave this. Let's not forget it as Damar Hamlin gets better, that we can talk with greater respect about the people involved in the game. We can stop dehumanizing people along the way as we get further back from this, because it's the old habit we fall into, right? People who have enough distance between them and the product on the field can often treat it just like that, a product, and not focus on the things that will end up making life better for the people that sell out so we can watch a game, and the things Dominique talked about healthcare in the NFL post-career and those things, which I know, and I saw, he brought up that Damar Hamlin was not vested in the NFL, and I saw the NFL point out that they are going to give him the benefits that he will need to be taken care of after his playing career are over if he doesn't get to that point. So, which is great in this one instance, but there are going to be players after that don't receive that grace because they are not involved in such a high profile moment. And so all of this now is on the rest of us to not only continue to keep Damar Hamlin in the center of our thoughts, because he's not done with this process of recovery yet, but it's also that reminder that we can be this. And I think I saw Holly Anderson over at the Fullcast say this can be us. We can be this more often than we usually are. It doesn't just have to be in this one moment. We showed we're capable, and so now we can continue to show that we are able in other circumstances and in ones where the gravity of the situation is a lot less heightened, at least in the moment. So it was really, really good to see and hear all that. And I think for the city of Buffalo, who, my God, I mean, in the last calendar year, the things they've been through with, talking about mass shootings and the weather that's gone through there and the snowstorms that took the lives of tens of people recently here. One place has been through and endured so much, and then to have this now as the start of the new year, that's a city and a group of people that have been through trauma from something that in Buffalo is supposed to be this big source of hope for them in the Bills. And so you continue to wrap your arms around all of those people who are closest at the center of this, but now seeing some light start to pop up at the end of the tunnel was huge, going into a weekend where, again, these guys are going to get back on the field. These fans are going to get back to rooting for this team, and I'm sure it's going to be different for a long time now than it was before.
Yeah, and for everyone. I mean, we're still heading into the playoffs, into the Super Bowl. Like, I think that's why you said you talked about Dominique and Mina making sure that we don't leave this moment here. Like, I think it's important for the NFL to just know that the community wants to continue to have these updates.
Yep.
For Damar Hamlin well into the summer OTAs. Like, this is a story. This is a human that we're all very much invested in a way that we weren't before Monday night.
I am fully prepared to see Damar Hamlin come out and make a pick for the Bills at the NFL draft, and to probably like lose my bleep crying. Like, that'll. Yeah. I'd imagine we are going to get some incredibly cathartic moment, and as everyone's pointed out here, you know, he's going to come out of this and he's going to see upwards of now $7 million donated towards his foundation. The outpouring there, like, to see someone feel how much they're loved is going to be awesome, and to see him re-enter in whatever form it ends up being, because who knows if he's ever going to play a down of football again. And quite honestly, who cares outside of him? Whatever that young man wants in his heart, but whatever his role is around this entire situation and the Bills and this going forward is going to be a sight to behold. And we're glad he's going to have that opportunity, first and foremost. So, again, we'll keep you updated as major news on this comes out, but Damar Hamlin's father before that addressed the Bills team on a Zoom call Wednesday to update them on people. So the people that needed to know the most have been kept abreast of this situation really well. And it seems like that's been good for everybody involved. So wanted to lead with the good news on this podcast. Wanted to make sure that we got that in there first. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we are going to talk to Ryan Nanny from the Shutdown Fullcast about a little bit of what's going on as we head into the weekend that's going to be dominated by some college football coming up on Monday, before we get to our picks and plenty of strange updates about how this game that we didn't have played on Monday is going to affect a very complicated playoff picture going forward next. All right, very excited to talk to Ryan Nanny from the Shutdown Fullcast After Dark. You guys have obviously seen him there at Celebrity Hot Tub on Twitter. Ryan is joining us as a part of his 2023 mission to appear on as many podcasts as possible. So, Ryan, welcome first off. And second, where did this dream come from? Where did this start?
Like all great dreams of science and technology, boredom. I was just like, I think it was just realizing that being a guest on a podcast is so much easier than hosting a podcast or starting a podcast. So why wouldn't you just do that as much as you could?
Has that been the biggest takeaway from being a part of the Shutdown Fullcast?
Yes, 100%. 100%. And you'll note the Fullcast almost never has guests because we can't figure out how to do that, is largely what it turns on.
I'm trying to think. The only guest I can think of in recent memory was the professional uncle from Jeopardy.
Yes, Skip. Skip was on. Jess Smetana has been on, I think once or twice. But it's real. It feels like it's tempting fate every time. But if I go guest on somebody else's podcast, like now it's the difference between hosting dinner and going to a dinner party. I would love to go to a dinner party because I'm not doing the dishes, or if I am, it's because now I look like a good guy, like a good helper.
That is true. If you bring one, like, no matter how small it is, if you bring one thing to a dinner party, you've checked off your box, you've done your job, the host is appreciative. Yes, you don't have 100%. To worry about trying to make a bunch of different groups of people get along together. No. You don't have to meal plan. You don't have to clean your house and your bathroom and all. Like, so basically, I've decided to embrace the audio version of being a guest at a dinner party rather than hosting a dinner party. Awesome. Well, we appreciate you coming to ours. I think we're at this point the third stop on your 2023 tour. That's correct. Yeah. All right, there we go. Early market entry, and I think the only non-TCU football podcast. Also correct. So far. Also correct. Yes. Got the market cornered on that. Great timing for this, considering too you get to turn this into the college football playoff national championship circuit in a weird way.
Yes.
Although
correct.
I feel like there's so much going on right now that feels tangentially college football that you guys will be sustained for a long time. Like watching what's gone on with the U.S. men's national team
100%.
feels deeply college football.
It feels both simultaneously deeply college football. Like if you said, oh, somehow Arkansas boosters are involved in this, I'd be like 100%. And if it turned into like, and now Gio Reyna is on Auburn's staff, I'd be like, yeah, absolutely. That tracks. But it also feels super European.
Yeah.
Like it's, I was texting friends about it yesterday and it's like, oh, this is the moment when like England's on notice. If you think America's not taking soccer seriously, go look at this.
I appreciated that the replies under every tweet that I saw about this were like, France isn't impressed. There's no sex tape involved in this.
But that's true of everything. Every piece of news that France consumes. It's like, no sex tape? We don't care if Kevin McCarthy wins Speaker of the House. Uninteresting. Boring. Move on.
Child's play.
Yes.
You find out your colleges have nuclear reactors on campus here? Nothing. A drop in the bucket.
Did someone have sex near the nuclear reactor? No. Move on.
Yeah.
Done.
Uninteresting, unserious program.
Unsexy. It's unsexy is what it is.
It is deeply deeply unsexy, which, like, I don't know, that also feels like, because I was going to say Gio seemed like he would be next in line to find a place on Texas A&M staff at the rate that they're going, but that's also a deeply unsexy staff.
It is a deeply unsexy staff, yeah. On the one hand, I appreciate that Jimbo Fisher has at no point been like, well, I'm going to try to win the media war. I'm going to try to win people over. And he is also at the perfect program where nobody wants you to do that. Certain schools, if you go there, like they kind of want you to be an ambassador for the school and sort of say like, hey, like make people like us or at least make people respect us. But at Texas A&M, it's like, nah, man, we're already a cult, so we just need you to be super culty with us. That's the important thing.
Yes, please win these football games at all costs. Like, we're like, and you're right, there is something, and God, I don't want to laud any of this, but at least they weren't trying to do this while also telling me that we are interested in, like, being, leaders of young men or teachers or any of the other normal rigmarole that we hear around these college programs. It's like, no, we might get pissed off when you insult our recruiting prowess by saying that we've been throwing bags of NIL money at these guys, but rest assured, we are just here to get the best possible football team on that field, however it looks.
That is correct. That is, yes. There is no... A&M is not like, you know what we're about first and foremost? Family values. They're about oil values. That's what they're about.
If your family's got oil, then we're about your values.
We value your family.
I feel like being a Texas A&M fan is basically just like being the human version of that Russell Westbrook eating the hot dog at the end of the bench gift. Because you can't have heard this news and been super excited, but you're like, oh, well, Jimbo at least acknowledged that his play calling is kind of a problem here. This is pretty good.
Yes. It weirdly represents progress, as messed up as that is. So,
yes.
Good on you, A&M, for being you as hard as you can be.
No one is being them harder. The other bit of news that I saw that felt deeply Fullcast was seeing Marjorie Taylor Greene retweeting the 3-year Letterman post from a Georgia sports message board offering up the Gerald R. Ford Right to Tailgate Act for 2023, written by the 3-year Letterman in response to SoFi banning tailgating.
Yeah, it's I really appreciate that. Like, I think this is one way in which politicians are like the rest of us, where obviously Washington has its own main storyline that a lot of people are like, God, I would really like to not talk about that. So Brian Kemp also tweeted about this today, and he was like, when the college football playoff, when the championship comes to Georgia, we'll let you tailgate at the state capitol if we have to. And it's like the the natural human inclination to be like, I want to talk about the sports thing so I don't have to talk about the real problems in my life. It's like, yep, totally get it. Absolutely get it.
I think we should be careful inviting more costumed people to Capitol buildings.
Yeah, but this way we're saying bring food at least. You know?
Exactly.
Like, if you're gonna invade a government building, bring snacks. That's all we're saying.
Government's like a dinner party, and if you come as a guest without bringing a snack, then what have you really done in this situation?
Extremely rude. Extremely rude.
Do you think there's any chance SoFi is able to keep, one, Georgia fans from tailgating, but also, two, TCU fans who have not been here before, and
Correct.
Who knows if they'll be back here anytime soon? Like, I don't know how you stop these people realistically.
I mean, I guess my thing is, like, I assume, without having done any research, that tailgating didn't start because teams and local governments were like, yes, we'd like you to bring a barbecue to a parking lot, you know?
Yeah.
So I suspect we are going to, you know what's probably going to happen is there's going to be a lot of like, look, if you can just keep it like, if I can just turn the other eye and I don't have to like really acknowledge the fullness of your tailgate, I won't say anything. I think it'll be that kind of, we're not letting you do it, but we're letting you do it.
Which, you know what? Like, I should say, I don't know the Georgia reputation for tailgating. I've been down to TCU's campus a couple times, and it's very much a rich person's tailgate.
Would you like to know the Georgia reputation for tailgating?
I would, please.
They leave their trash everywhere. That's the primary reputation for a tailgate at Athens. Is look, it kind of runs the gamut. Like, you've got some super nice tailgates. You've got some just sort of like standard, we grabbed chicken fingers and beer literally this morning, whatever. But the consistent reputation is after the tailgate's done, it's just trash everywhere. Everywhere.
Oh. So this might be a them thing.
It could be a them thing. It could be a them thing. And as a Florida fan, I'm going to say it's a them thing.
Because this does seem, I know I've seen NFL fans or people say that normally there's a lot where you're allowed to tailgate, which I don't see Rams or Chargers fans really as the tailgating type. So again,
Correct.
Expectations versus the reality of this situation is probably a little different. But again, TCU fans, it's much more of the wine and cheese tailgate, at least from what I saw down there. It is, hey, you've got your separate tented area and this is where you do your stuff right here. And you got a little sign that lets everybody know who you are in that spot. That doesn't seem like it would be as offensive, but the trash seems to be a real issue in this, because I also imagine them riding into this tailgate I like Mad Max Fury Road style with someone on the front of a car just announcing their entrance to this. Or you know what? Actually, I shouldn't say that. That's how I bet California government and the people around this imagine SEC fans coming to a tailgate.
That's what an SEC tailgate looks like. Yes, correct. Yeah, and just like Mad Max, there's only so much water to go around. It's mostly not water.
Yes, it's so true. Just whatever the metallics, I don't know. I guess fireball shots would be the metallic spray that sends them to meet the afterlife. It all tracks there. I want to run this by you because I know the Fullcast has a fraught relationship with my alma mater, but I can't help but feel that 2022 TCU is just 2012 Notre Dame with a cool drug frog.
Wow.
Because I said, close your eyes and imagine you have a team that was unranked to start the season, who has won a bunch of inexplicable close games. Yeah. They are led by one particularly dominant unit that has the Heisman runner-up on that side of the ball, and they are facing the defending national champion from the SEC coming off an absolute classic of a game in the game prior. Now open your eyes. Okay.
Here is the distinction. And this is, I think, important for both of these programs, but we'll talk about TCU to start. TCU, the 2012 Notre Dame team is trying to continue a tradition. It's trying to continue a thing that it's always been. It changes and it evolves from coach to coach, but like the baseline is always there. The decision to move on from Gary Patterson and go to Sonny Dykes was a big break. Like, that was basically saying, we will abandon the person who built this, the person who shepherded it through multiple conferences, if you count the conference they joined but never played in before they went to the Big 12.
Yeah.
And that's not a thing you do lightly or easily. And the fact that it has worked so well is, I think, the thing that makes it different. Also, there's no Purdue on this schedule that you say, oh, they should have lost to. Who's the Purdue that they should have lost to?
For them,
TCU, yeah.
Baylor. I think Purdue Pitt was the one you're thinking of.
Oh yes, Pitt is the one I'm thinking of.
Pitt was Baylor was their Pitt is my assertion here.
That's fine. Yeah. Yeah, and I guess neither of them won a conference championship either. So
the stars are all aligning. But no, you are right. Like the Sonny Dykesification of this program and the just insane vibe shift. Because one year, that was Brian Kelly's third year at Notre Dame.
Yes.
You had all of the theoretical ground laying and the things that go on normally in that. So that part is definitely different, is that they were somehow able to just shock, which was largely the same roster as a 5-7 team last year into this moment.
Right. And not just a 5-7 team last year, but a team that really since that first college football playoff year where they and Baylor get left out in favor of Ohio State, like had not really bubbled up to that level or even close to it. It had spent a lot of time sort of in the like, we make bowl games, we don't make a lot of noise. And for them to sort of pull the plug, I think there's something very interesting about that. I bring that up because Georgia is obviously more further down the road, but did the same thing when they said, we're done with Mark Richt.
Yeah.
Like Georgia had more of a program history at that point, had won national titles, had, won the SEC titles, etc. And so Mark Richt wasn't necessarily the guy, but he was a guy.
Right, like they were winning 9 games a year down that stretch when they made the decision. It wasn't like it had bottomed out in the last couple of years the way it had with Gary.
No. And the decision to sort of say, like, we think we can do better than this has obviously paid off. Like, and it makes me weirdly, and this is not a team I expected to talk about today, it makes me feel really optimistic for Wisconsin because I feel like they are the team that is sort of trying that now.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. It's honestly what Michigan was getting ready to do when they almost fired Jim Harbaugh, was saying, hey, all those winning seasons falling short of being our rival. Wisconsin's a really interesting one, too, because we talked about them in the landscape of open jobs this offseason, and you've got a place that is deeply serious about football. Resource-wise, I don't know if they're going to be at the top of the heap. They're not going to challenge Ohio State in the Big Ten, but they care about it enough, and Luke Fickell appears to be cut of that cloth where he comes from winning like that, so it does make a lot of sense.
Now, the problem is for every TCU, there's the cautionary tale of an Auburn. Oof. Auburn dumping Gus Malzahn to go with a coach that within a year they were like, what if we just immediately tried to fire him in the offseason, failed, and then let him have the most miserable lame duck season possible? What if we did that? So I would advise Wisconsin not to do that. That's my expert opinion.
I would advise Wisconsin not to adopt warring booster factions and attempt a coup on their head coach and all the above. That would be a nice way for them to do things. You mentioned the Georgia part of this, though, because now after that rise, they've also been tapped as everyone's saying it's theirs now. College football belongs to Georgia. They are the new Alabama.
Yep.
All these different things that we've put on them. We saw this year already, like Alabama did not go without challenge during that entire run. And so what Ohio State, a program with similar resources, similar traditions, did in that game shouldn't be altogether surprising. But as we walk into an expanded college football playoff era and stuff coming up like that, is it going to be damn near impossible for it already should be in a lot of ways, but for Georgia to even get close to what Nick and that Alabama team were able to do for a decade?
I guess it depends on what you define that as. If it's sort of be season in, season out, the undisputed number one, but not always win the title, I think they can do that. I think if you're talking about the number of championships that they won and the number of times they made it to the national championship game, that will become default harder. Some of that is, while Georgia plays right now, I would say still in the easier division in the SEC, Tennessee is making big strides. South Carolina is proving to be feisty in interesting ways. Kentucky has been feisty in the past, but isn't. Florida I don't want to talk about. And you still have to play the West. And while the West this year was not necessarily the same division it has been, I'm not ready to sort of pour dirt on it and say you're done. You're absolutely done. Because, for a long stretch of Alabama dominating, they could get to the SEC title game and sort of say, what garbage has the East thrown up for us to chew through? It wasn't, these were not dominant or consistent times in that division. So that was never a speed bump. And I think for Georgia, it would be foolish to say, oh, the West is the thing they're going to run over. So the fact that you still have that as the hurdle is, to me, one of the key differences between the two. But like everything else, how they build the program, how they run it, how they recruit, what they do and don't do transfer portal wise, what they do schematically, it all feels very like, oh, okay, this is the next evolution of what Nick built in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, it feels only right that after so long, one of his former assistants finally stepped up and was like, no, I actually can replicate the process over here.
And like, rightly, it's the one who stayed the longest. Mm-hmm. And this is the thing that I was talking to my colleague Stephen Godfrey about recently. The thing that Nick Saban doesn't always get, credit is the wrong word, but I think a key part of his decision-making is he picks his spots. Like when he decided to take the LSU job in the first place, it was all based on how much per capita NFL talent Louisiana was putting into the league. That's a tactical decision. A lot of these coaches who have left Alabama to go other places are going places like Tennessee when other coaches have taken it, for instance. That's not a good example because it's not the right. Oh, well, let's use McElwain taking the Florida job, for instance. Right. Florida is a talent-rich state, but it's not a state you can lock the border down. Mm-hmm. And it is a state where Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, LSU, plenty of places are going to be pulling from. So I think Kirby made a tactical decision to go to a program where he was like, this is not a rebuild. Under Mark Richt, they had not bottomed out. And there are enough things that I can change and optimize that with enough time, and it only took, 2 or 3 years, we can start making this run the way it needs to run. And other assistants have taken much more challenging fare on, I would say.
Yeah, it did what, we talk about some coaches who were like, honestly, to bring up Florida, Billy Napier at the G5 level was always that example of, he could have jumped and taken any job, but he kind of knew I can hold this Louisiana thing in place for long enough to wait for the one I really want and jump there. This is sort of the Power 5 version of that. It also has, in its own way, given birth to what we see now, which is the bloated, disproportioned staff and team pictures before every season, where you see double the amount of analysts that you do uniformed players in every picture. Yes. Somehow making their way there, as Kirby just took definitely that model from Nick and said, no, it's not quite Nick Saban's School of Wayward Boys yet, but I'm sure it's got the potential to become that.
Where you're like, is that a former NFL head coach making like $63,000 a year as an analyst? What's happening here?
What the hell? Oh yeah, it's coming like a freight train.
Yes.
I guess I bring that all up though relative to the expanded playoff, because I guess with this season, Tulane winning the Cotton Bowl, we get a bunch of results all over the place that kind of seem indicative of go back to Cincinnati making the playoff last year, newer faces showing up. Hell, you brought up the West, Brian Kelly getting LSU to the SEC championship in year one, Tennessee being ranked number 1 for a bunch of this season. I don't want to overreact to 1 year too much because, man, we're so new in the portal. We see how quickly that's going to affect and shock some programs. But does any part of this feel like in the wake of Alabama handing that baton that we might have a sport that is healthy enough with enough teams in range to make a 12-team playoff more interesting than I would have thought it would have been 2 or 3 years ago?
The boring lawyer answer I'll give you is maybe. It really just depends, because I think, every time there's a proposed or real playoff change, every college football writer does the thing where it's like, well, let's apply this to the last 10 years and see what it would have looked like. And some years it looks really cool and fun. And some years it's like, why is this 4-loss team in the playoff? To me, the interesting thing is that this is the first time that I can remember where college football has made a change to the postseason that is not expressly about finding a deserving champion. The decision to go to a 1 versus 2 in the first place in the BCS was about sort of like, we want to settle the championship on the field. The decision to go to 4 from the BCS was about, we think there are deserving aspirants to a championship that are not getting a shot. Nobody is making the case that we need to go to 12 because every year there are 12 or even 6 teams that deserve a shot at the title. That said, if you put that to one side and just say, well, we don't care about that, we just want it to be entertaining, I think pro sports prove that, like, yeah, sometimes it will be. The Beastquake game where the Seahawks beat the Saints, that's the 7-9 Seahawks, if I remember. By no measure do you look at that and say this is a team that quote unquote deserves to be contending for a Super Bowl. But it's still a fun game. Like, that's sort of the trade-off here, is you are giving up the pretense of, oh, this is only for like the most special boys who get to participate in this. But you are going to see some results that are going to be entertaining and mess things up, because we know from the regular season, that's just how college football works.
If you want entertaining and will sometimes mess you up, check out the Shutdown Fullcast with Ryan Nanny and the rest of the gang there. Email him, ryan.nanny@gmail.com. Have him on your podcast as a dinner party guest. Help him towards his 2023 goal. Ryan, we appreciate the time today, buddy.
Thanks for having me, man.
Brandon, one story we need to get to certainly before the week is out is what's going on in the world of the UFC. UFC President Dana White captured on video, released by TMZ, slapping his wife during a New Year's Eve party on vacation in Mexico. The clip got released Monday. It shows his wife slapping him across the face, then Dana quickly responding by slapping her in the face. Both have come out with statements, him and his wife, who have been together for decades, saying that this is out of character, nothing like this has ever happened before. But Dana White says, I am making no excuses for this. And while he technically does not, Brandon, that's not really what matters. What matters is what is going to happen as far as a punishment. How will Dana White actually be held accountable for this in a way that he has stated in the past would be the case for fighters? A statement circulated from 2014 where Dana White said, and I'm paraphrasing here, the one thing you don't recover from in the UFC is putting your hands on a woman. And yet here he is right now as the unquestioned face of the sport. Like, as fighters have come and gone and certainly driven the sport and deserve a lot of credit for that, Dana White operates the same place within the UFC as Jerry Jones does with the Cowboys. He is both the person who signs the checks at the top of all of this, but also is going to get out in front of the microphone and be the ones giving the clips, giving the sound bites, appearing on the shows for this. And so, much like when an owner in the NFL gets in trouble, there's concern about who is actually going to be the one punishing. And at least in that case, at least in the pro team leagues, you've got other ownership that is going to make sure at least something happens, even if it's usually never enough something, or a commissioner that's involved. The only people here really that seem to be able to do this are the TV partners, which would be Endeavor, their parent company, and ESPN, like how they would go about trying to put something in the way of a punishment. Because what is Dana White going to punish him himself? Is anyone going to really buy that?
I don't know, Mike. I think this is indicative of a huge problem in America, outside of especially domestic violence, Mike. But this is the guy who owns, operates, started the most violent sport that we have outside of football when it comes to just like people getting in the ring and exacting violence on each other with their hands and feet. Like, it's just insane that it's this late in the week and I just found out about it. Like, there's a reality of the media not knowing how to handle this either. And I don't know, like punishment seems like something that I can't really expect to happen based on how shush, shush, hush, hush this entire story has been up until this point.
Yeah, well, you're right, because UFC is a massive moneymaker for the partners that we just talked about here, especially in the area where the era where things have been put behind a paywall. UFC and live fights are one thing that's been able to draw people for these pay-per-view events and actually make a dent by and large. And the other part of punishment for people in high-profile positions is it tends to be, what does the backlash from the people with money look like? Sponsorship dollars and the potential of lost eyeballs here. Is this such an embarrassment that people will turn away from the UFC? And just thinking about this anecdotally, one of my concerns with that is you've got a fan base that, yes, like USC has very dedicated day in and day out fans, but I think also a lot of that revenue model is driven by casual fans, people like you and me who will tune in when a big fight card comes up and to check that out. And is that group as inclined to go about that judging with morality, saying, no, you will no longer get my dollars? Or is the viewing experience so passive and so infrequent that you won't have that? Because again, the guy runs the sport. He's the only one right now really within that body of it that's got the ability to punish himself. And I mean, when have we ever seen someone that controls the money punish themselves in a way that the public would look at and say feels just for this? When again, he's stated in the past that anyone below him in the UFC would be gone and you would not be back here. Like, that's the standard, where if Dana White were punishing himself as a fighter in this, you wouldn't be fighting in the UFC anymore, by his admission in the past. And so is that going to be the standard? I highly doubt it in this instance. And Dana White deserves something strict on that front based on what this action is alone, let alone the fact that you've got the video, which right, wrong, or indifferent, people always seem to need to react strongly to this when it's in the case of players, going all the way back to Ray Rice in the NFL. But then I think, magnify that even more. People always have this debate when it comes to the NFL when a player does something, and this is always a source of consternation from the NFLPA and players, that players seem to be punished so harshly, but then you'll have an owner who will go out and get a DUI or do something like this, and the punishment will be far less harsh because they're not as much in the public eye, even though their position and their position of power inside the league is far greater because of the amount of lives that they control. For Dana White, he's incredibly public. He is all of those things that ownership is in the NFL, and all of the things that players and all the other public front-facing people would be. And so one would think the punishment should reflect that, but looking at the situation in reality, it is highly doubtful it will, and that's a huge problem.
Yeah, another accurate comp is probably Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
When it comes to how forward-facing you are, and people even thinking that you're a part of the thing that you just run. But I think, if anything, right now, he needs to step down expeditiously and hire someone to help figure out what needs to happen moving forward. Because, like you said, there's a lot of money coming in. He's the face of it, but like any good company, it's not just that one person that's going to be the be-all, end-all of how it is moving forward. So he's built a good company that can run without him now, and I think he needs to step down, especially after putting his hands on his wife and getting caught on camera doing it.
Yeah, Brandon, that would probably be the outcome that would make sense. But I have severe doubts that anyone in this process is going to hold him accountable in that way for it, at least for any extended amount of time. Because you mentioned Vince McMahon it appears coming right on back as soon as it's time to do money conversations over at the WWE. So we will wait and see what happens with that, but did not want to let the week go by without certainly commenting on what is an incredibly complicated conversation, not in the fact that there is any complication about who is in the wrong and deserving to be punished here in Dana White, but how that may actually go about because of all the circumstances that we just mentioned. Brandon, no easy transition portion of things in here. It's never fun talking about domestic violence and then having to try and figure out how to talk about sports again after. But we have football coming up this weekend, and so we will try and do just that. And Brandon, I did want to give a shout out, by the way. Here's maybe a palate cleanser on this, and someone whose name I didn't bring up off the top and wanted to, as we're going to talk about finally, the football ramifications. I think we're far enough away to look at, because the NFL had to reckon with this, what the football ramifications are, as the Bengals-Chiefs game's not going to resume. They're not going to play that game. Taking cues from everybody involved, it would, one, be a scheduling nightmare, but also those players don't need to go and relive that right now. And so kudos to everyone involved for taking their cues from those players, but did want to shout out, and I saw this tweet from Albert Breer shouting out the work of Bill's assistant athletic trainer, Denny Kellington, who was the one administering CPR to Damar Hamlin on the field during that play on Monday night. And the one thing, as you heard the doctors from the UC Medical Center talking yesterday, was the speed with which the emergency response team acted 100% made a difference when it comes to the potential blood and oxygen loss to the brain and all these things that are important to the vitals and his recovery going forward. That team, we talked about how there's no plan for that moment from a broadcast side, how you're going to be able to handle all of those machinations in the way they were talking about getting those teams back in, making the decision about suspending the game, all those things that are variable, because the thing at the heart of this, Damar Hamlin's life, is what you're trying to make sure is at the center first and foremost in the way that you proceed. We said those people don't have a plan. The emergency response team has a plan. And that is one thing. The emergency action plan went into effect and worked as it was supposed to work in this game. And it was because of people like Denny Kellington on there, who actually, it's the old military saying, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your training. These people were ready, and their readiness may have saved a young man's life, and that's incredible. And they should never pay for a beer in Buffalo ever again. Simply put, yes. Those are true blue, actual heroes that went to work and helped keep this young man with us.
We heard T. Higgins mention that it's been a hard time for him, but at the end of the day, they're professional football players, and they have to fall back on doing their job. I think as Twitter followers, fans of the game, X, Y, and Z, we have to remember that there is whole staffs of people that are there to do their job when these incidents happen, and the unexpected is what they prepare for and what they recognize. So yes, like I think I thought about them just in the sense that maybe it was something that they were saying or doing that alerted the players that this was different. So I am thankful in a time where everyone's complaining that Roger Goodell took too long and there was too much of a delay between the ambulance getting there and him going down. People were working, and people saved Damar Hamlin's life. I
think, by the way, you mentioned things they may have said. It was really fascinating listening to the doctors at the UC Medical Center talking, and they said, he's like, those guys have worked, and those guys have worked together, the emergency response crew on the field, so much that he said, he's like, they probably didn't have to say much to each other because they knew the process so well. And it's just amazing, like all these sports corollaries. I always tell the story, like Zach Strief and Jari Evans, who played in the New Orleans Saints for like almost a decade together. They wouldn't make calls like the rest of us on the offensive line. They would basically just like look and both see it together. They would kind of tap the other, and they would know because they've got so much time together. And that's fun and cool anecdotally in a football sense because of what you accomplish.
Of course.
But here, to know and be reminded that the people who are actually part of the life-saving mechanisms are so dialed into this that they also can go out there and in these important moments not have to waste time with communication where seconds are actually the matter of life and death, that they're that dialed in. It was just really incredible to hear the behind the scenes and the training and the psyche of all these people that are a part of the most important processes in that stadium on every given week, even if they never, hopefully, thankfully, have to use those but once in an instance like this that we've seen. So again, just wanted to make sure we got that shout out before we started getting into the football of this. Missed it off the top, and that's on me. But Denny Kellington and the rest of that emergency response team, like, again, I hope at some point they put up a fund for us to be able to go and buy them several rounds of whatever they're looking for or give back to them. I know they're doing their job, but there's some things that are just above and beyond, and that was certainly one of those moments. Now, Brandon, we also said that Bengals and Bills game is not going to resume. And because of that, it's got implications for everybody that's going to be at the top of this. And because of that, there was a bunch of stuff that I saw getting floated around in the interim, like people wondering if they were going to push the start of the playoffs back a week, erase that week between the AFC Championship, NFC Championship, and the Super Bowl, potentially add an 8th team to every playoff field in the conferences. And while most of that stuff was dismissed, I think Adam Schefter said that they never considered adding an 8th team or anything like that. The scenario they came up with is equally, if not more complicated. And Brandon, I think we could all start off by saying, I don't really care that it's that complicated. There might be fans of these individual teams that feel some type of way about this now that we're far enough away, but I think we're all still in that mode where we're going to extend the grace to the NFL on the scheduling side of this because they appear to be taking their cues and operating in the best interest of the players that were at the heart of this and not trying to jam another game in on top of the situation that they've already been a part of. So,
right. Yeah, I think something to remember is that complicated is entertaining, so we don't want to stray away from it too much. Like anything that Steve Carnacchia can come in and describe on a big board, like I'm into it. That's content that I need. That's me watching the Instagram reel.
He's the only one who saw what I'm about to read to you and had his eyes light up. Like Steve saw opportunity here, and he goes, "Oh yeah." He was just sitting there looking at his phone, knowing it was about to vibrate. Like, "Oh yeah, you motherfuckers need me right now." Because listen to this: because of the canceled game, the owners are going to vote today. So if you're listening to this podcast on Friday, the owners are going to vote on these scenarios that the competition committee threw out on Thursday that involve a neutral site AFC Championship game. Here are the outcome-dependent scenarios that we've got here. If Buffalo and Kansas City both win or tie, the Bills-Chiefs championship game would be at a neutral site. If Buffalo and Kansas City both lose and Baltimore wins or ties, a Bills-Chiefs championship game would be at a neutral site. If Buffalo and Kansas City both lose and Cincinnati wins, a Bills or Bengals versus Chiefs championship game will be at a neutral site.
Why do you care what these people...
If Buffalo and Kansas City both win this weekend, the Chiefs will get the bye. If Buffalo wins and Kansas City loses, the Bills will be the number 1 seed and get a bye, and no neutral site games would come into play. If the Ravens win and are matched against Cincinnati in an AFC wildcard game, the site will be determined by a coin flip. And if Cincinnati wins, or if the two teams are not matched against each other after a potential Ravens win, regular scheduling procedures will go into effect. How's that sound, Brandon?
Like soup, maybe cereal. Like I don't know what is what. Like. I mean, I can tell you, like you tell me all this is just for decide where the site of this game, like a coin flip, Mike. Like I don't know, you want to have a hot dog eating contest to decide one of these things. Like this is just insanity.
Hot dog eating contest would be a much better way to decide that one. Again, I understand the stakes of the AFC Championship game, and again, it's all playoff football. Hot dog eating contest to decide where the Baltimore Ravens and Cincinnati Bengals game will be played. You can cover it in Skyline Chili for all I care. I don't give a damn. Skyline, Old Bay, do whatever regional variety gets your rocks off.
Ooh.
But
Yeah, like that.
Brandon, to me, it was like playing blackjack. When the dealer flips over their cards, the minute they draw two or more aces, the minute it's more than one on the table, my eyes glaze over and I just wait for them to tell me, hey, is the money coming my way or are you taking my money away? Because at that point, I don't care. I can't do that advanced math. I can't do ace math beyond one. And so I'm not going to try, much the same way I look at this. And again, as someone who's not a fan of any of those teams individually and just has to cover this broadly, just spit it out to me at the end and I will accept whatever result you've made.
Mike, as someone who was dramatically and drastically underserved in the public school system in Louisville, Kentucky, I am with you every step of that way. Like the heroes at those poker tables that like correct the dealer, like, whoa, no, you got that wrong. Hey, look at that. And then they actually got it wrong, Mike. I'm just sitting there like, I looked next to him, I was like, I am sitting next to Superman. Like this, I live a life just waiting for people to tell me what's what.
Permission to shake the hand of the bravest man that I have ever met. I salute you, sir.
Man.
Yeah, it's so that's what's at stake. And now it does make certain games mean different things going into this weekend. Then obviously Kansas City against the Raiders in a division game carries that weight going into the weekend here. Buffalo and New England. There's plenty of stake too. The AFC wild card that involves the New England Patriots potentially, the Miami Dolphins potentially, the Jacksonville Jaguars if they were to lose against the Titans potentially, and certainly the NFC picture that we know as well with the Seahawks, Packers, and Lions. So Brandon, lots to get into over the course of this weekend there. So we got picks, and we do 6 thick picks around here. Brandon, stocking are they different now in the new year? Are they something other than stocking stuffers?
Yes, they have to evolve from stocking stuffers, but I'm not sure exactly what it is. Maybe it's new me, new picks. Like it's something.
New year, new picks.
New year, new picks. Let's do it.
NYNP. All right, so we've got 6 thick picks, which is normally 3 college and 3 pro picks. We will give out national championship picks on Monday when that game is going to be played. And so this weekend, it's just all the NFL games. We got Saturday and Sunday games like we did the first weekend without college football as well. So I got 6 picks in the NFL. Brandon's got 3 picks in the NFL for New Year, new picks. And just as a recap and a reminder. Oh, you've got 4. All right, I didn't see the 4th on there. That's my fault.
Yeah, that's because I haven't registered it yet.
There we go. Vibes-based picking. Brandon went 4-0 last weekend. He's 11-9 on the year. I am 48, 57, and 4 on the season, which doesn't feel great, but I have to say it out loud and acknowledge it so you guys can fade me if you so choose. That being said, feeling good about this week. Riding high on this one. Brandon, want to start this off in a game. We talked a lot with Aaron Schatz yesterday about the Minnesota Vikings. That being said, love Minnesota -7 this week. They are not in a game where they're underdogs, which is where they have been right shit this season and really going back to last season. And Chicago is getting ready to start Nathan Peterman instead of Justin Fields at quarterback because of a hip injury. And I'm not going to do the disrespect Nathan Peterman thing because he is now a tenured professional in this league and he's fine suited to be a backup quarterback, but he ain't Justin Fields. And that whole Chicago machine has thrived off Justin Fields going out there and trying to shatter like Cam Newton rushing records, which is insane. So Minnesota -7 feels like an easy one here. When Minnesota doesn't have high stakes attached to what they're doing, it's amazing what that team can accomplish.
Ooh, yes. I don't believe them, but I definitely believe the other team less. Who's the
Bears?
Bears, yeah. I mean, obviously, yeah, without Justin Fields.
Yeah, so forget that one. Get that one out in the open there. The second one I have coming up, we've talked about them, Buffalo -7 versus New England. A team that has a bunch to play for. Obviously, the mental state thing is an unknown. How this team will respond, whether it'll be wind in their sails, and especially with good news in the last couple of days, if it'll allow them to go out and sort of be more themselves playing in a football game against a Patriots team that offensively, has been a struggle all year. Defensively has been a juggernaut, as Aaron pointed out yesterday. Not a great matchup against this Bills team in particular. This just feels like a kind of a vibe play here. Like, I'm not going to ascribe some sort of Disney movie script to this, but Buffalo -7 in this game. The Disney movie script that I'm going to have is Lions +5 versus Green Bay. This is, again, I'm going to make just a ton of gambling references today, but when you're playing craps, the do not pass line is sort of like betting against the table. And while you might make money, it never feels good to be the one betting against fun for the table. And betting against the Lions this week feels like betting against fun for the table. I understand they have been a bad road team this year. I understand that offense doesn't look quite the same away from the safe confines of Ford Field. And I understand Green Bay went out and put on a really good performance shutting down Justin Jefferson last week. But heart wants what it wants, man. I feel like every time I've gone against the Lions this year, they've come up and showed out. And so I'm going to say Dan Campbell's bunch, fueled by grit and monster energy and backwards white sunglasses, are going to Guy Fieri their way to victory on this one, or at least victory against the spread here. We'll see. I think Green Bay probably still ekes this out, but I think it's like a field goal game where, again, in classic Lions fashion, they are bleeding from the mouth when they walk away from this one.
I think this might be it's one of those that ends up being one of the best games of the week.
And it's got flexed to the Sunday Night Football game for that reason, because going into the weekend, the Seahawks and their game against the Rams, if the Seahawks win that one, then the Lions are eliminated from postseason contention. The Seahawks need Green Bay to go out there and lose this. The Seahawks need help. The Seahawks can win. Green Bay is the only team of those three that it is win and you're in. The Packers just need to beat the Lions on Sunday Night Football, and they'll get a winner, you're in. So the Lions need a bunch of help too. So and I will look that up shortly and remind you when Brandon's giving his picks. But in the meantime, Brandon, Seahawks and Rams over 41.5 in this game. This was a barn burner last time they played, and that was at the height of the Rams' injury woes. I think Matthew Stafford had just gone on IR at that point, and that game was essentially Bobby Wagner, and the Pips more or less in that game. There was not a lot of talent left on the field. I think Aaron Donald had already been off the field at that point too. So Jalen Ramsey and Bobby Wagner were essentially the only ones left out here. Bobby Wagner on the revenge tour too for this game talked about going back to play at Seattle for the first time, the team that he talked about giving up on him in the way they did before they released him. And so revenge game factor, Baker Mayfield wild card factor, since he wasn't on the team the last time there. This feels like these teams could get over 41.5 points.
Yeah, but Wagner already got his revenge the first time these teams played at SoFi, right?
Well, he did in that the game was close. They still ended up losing that game.
Oh, I'm talking about personal revenge. I think he got an interception that game.
Oh, he was great. He was great, and has been great for
making
that
a big
team.
play. Yeah, making a big play against the team that gave up on you. That's the revenge.
That is certainly the revenge, but again. It still feels like the right choice on this one, especially with Baker Mayfield, a.k.a. the future Ryan Fitzpatrick, moving into that role. Brandon, Jags minus 6.5 against Tennessee. This one for the division. Josh Dobbs getting the start instead of Malik Willis, as that season has gone sort of awry for him. And the big one here, Amani Hooker showing up late as a DNP on Thursday's practice. Traylon Burks also out of the lineup there. It sounds like they'll be all right with Derrick Henry, but we've talked all season. Mike Vrabel, NFL MacGyver, all these things. Just feels like running out of gas at the wrong time against the Jags team that's finally started to have it click, and I think will be too much. So I think the Jags cover the points here, which was the team that you were early to market on last week and made people some money on.
Yeah, but I'm afraid of that one game that goes differently at the end last game of the season. It happens every year.
And Jags fans will tell you, by the way, they are more than prepared for that to be this game.
Oh yeah, well, aren't they the ones that put out the Colts last year when it didn't matter for Jacksonville?
Yes, they are. That made for a very wild Week 18 last year. Absolutely.
Okay. You're not giving me the picks, are you?
No, I've got one more pick on this one, Brandon.
I see.
And that is Pittsburgh minus 2.5 against Cleveland. This is strictly a bet on Mike Tomlin. The Pittsburgh Steelers sit at 8-8 right now. Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season as a head coach. Now, in the past, because if it was a 16-game schedule, that could mean going 8-8. This year, there will not be that opportunity. It is put up or shut up in a division game here. Pittsburgh and Kenny Pickett have been playing better and better as the weeks have gone along here. And this Cleveland team, man, I don't know if you've seen the ugliness going on over there. Jadeveon Clowney coming out with some very pointed words saying that, yeah, there's about a 95% chance I'm not going to be here next year. I need to be somewhere where people believe in me. Complained that the Browns were purposely putting Myles Garrett over the worst of the tackles to inflate his stats. I think his quote was something along the lines of, you guys are trying to make one guy a Hall of Famer instead of giving the team the best chance to win. Myles Garrett is like 2 sacks off of Nick Bosa this season and has been balling. And apparently Jadeveon Clowney is salty as all hell about it.
Yeah, he's over here getting blocked.
Just getting blocked. How bad does that suck?
As a defensive lineman, it's the fucking worst. It's so bad. Like I hear how angry he is. He's like, he got the weak ass ones over there. But I'm gonna take this as a hand it over to me, Mike, because I have one pick here that is a simply fade Gojo pick. I think in my picks, I think I should have one fade Gojo pick a week.
It's just smart business
as
at
we
this
elevate.
point. It's just smart business right now.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the numbers. So Cleveland Brown plus 2.5 versus the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Wow.
I know Mike Tomlin got my rose on Monday. I know I'm afraid of the Steelers as a Ravens fan and Mike Tomlin, but there's something about with the Browns right now that I think, like, we haven't factored into I hate to say it this way, but the Deshaun Watson factor for games yet, because he's kind of been getting slowly worked into things and like getting, like, this might be the perfect time for him to just explode. Oh God, that's a terrible term for him, but he might do well and get the Cleveland Browns to that plus 2.5.
It's my only worry in this is the fact that he might figure out how to play football well enough, consistently enough again, but
yeah.
I'm going to count on Kenny Pickett and his very fine-sized hands that are working out perfectly okay at the NFL level. Yeah, last laughs on you motherfuckers, hand-sized people.
Yeah. Okay, let me say this, Mike. I have a plus 2.5, -7 sandwich here for my picks.
Ooh, yummy.
So let me do next Cincinnati Bengals -7 versus my Ravens. I just don't trust my favorite football team.
Understandable.
At all. And I still want them to win this game. I need them to win this game. But I've been hurt too many times to really, like, count on it. So, and this is just the spread. I want them to win the game, but I do think the Bengals are the better team right now. And, yeah, Bengals -7. Moving on to another better team, the Cowboys -7, going to play the Washington Commanders. Now, I know it's an NFC East battle and it can get weird, but it can't get that weird against the Commanders against Sam Howell.
Yeah, man, very real concerns for that young man going out there for his first crack at this one here.
Ooh, and they might even start the backups, so maybe Zeke Elliott gets a lot of touches and runs over that defense. Like, it's something. It's going to be something over there. And then I'm closing out my picks, new picks, new me, 4-0 again, count on it. New York Jets plus 2.5 versus the Dolphins. Mike, the Mike McDaniel and the Miami Dolphins are on their third to fourth string quarterback. Really don't know what to say. I know Tyreek Hill and all the weapons, they're built like the 49ers, but if the 49ers don't have a Brock Purdy, then who's getting the ball? And the Jets, as bad as they are, I still think it's important for them to at least get that last win over the Miami Dolphins that were the darling team at the beginning of the season. I guess they were too. But I like the Jets over the Dolphins.
Yeah, the Dolphins, Skylar Thompson, the old Kansas State quarterback, going to be getting the start in this game here. Yes. They said, made it clear Tua Tagovailoa was not going to be a factor. The latest concussion certainly changing things there. And if they make the postseason, I don't know what would happen. Like, they're in that AFC wildcard picture that we talked about, and I don't know if Tua would be back. We heard from his brother Talia during bowl season, who said he believes that his brother is going to try and get back on the field and is wired to want to get back out there and play. But obviously that's sort of perilous for everyone involved. The Jets have had their own strange quarterback situation this year with the Mike White, Zach Wilson saga, with a little bit of Joe Flacco mixed in there as well. You mentioned Brandon too for your Cowboys, but the Cowboys still have a chance to potentially win the NFC East and snatch the 1 seed this weekend. So starters are going to be in there, and that's why I am very worried for Sam Howell's safety, as he is a rookie quarterback who has not seen the field yet this season, going up against that Cowboys defense that, if they're good at one thing, it is making the lives of quarterbacks very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think they realize they need a tune-up game going into the playoffs, and hopefully they're smart enough to use this as that. Yeah,
and Sam Howell is also like the perfect kind of quarterback that was mobile in college, that hasn't been on an NFL field yet, to see that his speed is not that kind of speed that you can outspeed against their speed, and may test that in ways that are going to negatively affect the Washington Commandos and their new mascot, Major Tuddy.
I don't like that people are calling them the Commandos, but I respect it.
I hope Major Tuddy has a good time. I feel bad that this is probably not going to be a fun game for him to be a part of here as the new mascot.
Talk about tune-ups. Major Tuddy's tune-up.
A major tutty tune-up. And by the way, speaking of tune-ups and getting things right here, that NFC wildcard picture I promised you guys, how that goes this weekend. If the Packers lose, the Seahawks get in if they beat the Rams. If the Seahawks lose and then the Lions beat the Packers, they get in. So that's how that one works here. The Packers win and they're in. If the Rams win and the Packers lose, then if the Seahawks win and the Packers lose, the Seahawks get in. And if the Seahawks lose and then the Lions win, then the Lions get in, and we get Man Campbell in the postseason. So that is the scenario I promised you. And again, I understand if you don't really give a damn because these are complicated and playoff scenarios are like my least favorite part of every NFL season. Clinching scenarios that go beyond just win and one team lose, to me, are non-starters. I will not mention them. But again, we got to bring information to the people, Brandon, because that's part of what we're here for. You know what else we're here for, Brandon?
Oh, shit.
To ask people the all-important question, do you know what time it is?
There you go.
See? Worthwhile advice.
There you go.
Worthwhile advice. Download, subscribe, rate, and review Gojo wherever you get your podcast. 5-star rating. Leave Brandon tips on potty training youngsters and tell him what a great job he did rapping on this, that, and the third. Brandon, let's get to a very relatable moment from the Texas A&M men's basketball team. They ended up going into their game against Florida already down before the opening tip. That's because shortly after leaving the court following warm-ups, the Aggies managers realized that they had left all the game jerseys at the hotel. And so the Florida guard, Will Richard, made one free throw to take a 1-0 lead before the opening tip of that game. The head coach of Texas A&M, Buzz Williams, ended up getting his 500th win in this game and took responsibility after. He said, I forgot the jerseys in the room, said that he was protecting his managers. He said he came up and his coaches would have protected him in that way. But Brandon, this preys on the dream that I have continually as a former athlete, where I will show up to a football field in my dream and always be asked to go into the game and not have like my helmet or my cleats or my shoulder pads, despite the fact that I am on the sideline for an active Division I football game.
I like that. I never had that dream because I was one of those guys that always had my helmet on the bench because it was just embarrassing. But I was like, if they call my name, I'll be ready.
There is nothing worse than just like you want to maintain the appearance of looking ready because you're trying to get out there, but it means wearing your helmet more, which objectively sucks, especially when you're not that sweaty and it's not lubed up for you.
Yes, true. But that's what warm-ups are for. But when it comes to the people that are on the bench, you can't be too dialed out. You got to be dialed in, and helmet is the perfect fake I'm dialed in play.
That is true. And so shout out to the Texas A&M equipment managers. Players fuck up. That stuff happens. Probably don't let one mistake become two mistakes on that front, though, and like mess up the pants or something next time, too, because that's a hard one to walk back when someone goes up to the scorer's table, pulls off the breakaway pants, and now all of a sudden they got the wrong shorts on. So lock in from here on out. We're rooting for you guys. Brandon, let's get to that. So Jim Harbaugh maybe pulling a Pete Carroll is what people are going to run with here. According to Nicole Arbach and Austin Meek over at The Athletic, Michigan's received a notice of allegation from the NCAA outlining potential rules violations involving Jim Harbaugh's program, sources told The Athletic on Thursday. They face four level 2 violations and one level 1. The level 2 violations are regarding contact with two prospects during the COVID-19 dead period. The level 1 violation is because Jim Harbaugh apparently gave them false or misleading information, aka he didn't feel like cooperating with the NCAA, which I cannot stress enough, more often than not, is good business. As two men wearing Notre Dame logos on our chests right now at a school that fully cooperated the last time the NCAA came knocking and still got all 12 of the 2012 wins vacated.
Crazy.
There is no benefit to cooperation. They will not go easy on you for that. Now, maybe you save that for more severe penalties than this, which would have likely been a slap on the wrist, but this is just more fuel to the fire for people that want to believe that Jim Harbaugh, who under new guidelines from the NCAA would be penalized even if it wasn't as at Michigan at the college level, would skate those penalties entirely and not have to deal with any of this bullshit if he was coaching an NFL team next year.
It's the wrong time for the NCAA to poke the bear, because he's like, y'all know I can leave.
Yeah, so now, it's not lack of institutional control. It's not the big one where shit would really go sideways for you, but it's just at this point, as we're weighing the scales, like you said, of, I wouldn't have to do any of this recruiting stuff anymore. I can go after the ultimate prize. I'm probably going to get control of a team, and I don't got to worry about this, when and how to talk to a recruit at the wrong time type thing anymore. I don't have to fake it with an NCAA that at this point seems like it's more defunct than it is actually helping.
Jim Harbaugh does love a challenge, though. I actually do think that he welcomes all of the craziness. So
that's his kink. He actually looks at this, and this is actually in the pros stay column here. Yeah. So again, moral of the story: never cooperate with the NCAA. No benefit or value will come of it for you here. Die with the lie and go on about your merry way. Brandon, forget all that though. Let's get to the third, because we got the official news that we have been waiting for, and our outfits make a whole lot more sense with this news in mind, because Sam Hartman, the ACC's all-time career leader in touchdown passes, quarterback extraordinaire, very handsome young man, making his way to South Bend, Indiana, announced it via his social media yesterday that he will be taking his last season at the helm for the Fighting Irish. And Brandon, this is the moment we've been waiting for. We knew the news was announced by Pete Thamel, or hinted at a while ago when Sam entered the transfer portal after the season, but didn't want to get too excited, because never know who could swoop in at the 11th hour, who could try and find a way to fatten his pockets in the NIL era. Wouldn't have begrudged the young man. That being said,
no.
Sam, welcome to the fold. If you need anything, we're here for you. We're very excited to have you here. I'm sorry for some of the weirdo Notre Dame fans that I already saw asking you to have children with their significant others. We need to act right. We've had a handsome quarterback before. We know how to do this. We've got the training. We're a little out of practice, but we know how to do this. And so just don't make it weird. But also, we may have the best looking head coach and quarterback combination in the history of college football.
Yes, Mike, but it feels wrong at the same time. I know Sam Hartman's number was 10, but because he's rocking it, and Drew Pine just got done rocking it, it just looks like he was the healthy twin, or at least the one that got all the nutrients. I don't know, Mike, it just it just bothers me that this dude, our new starting quarterback, just looks like a literal, evolved Pokemon version of Drew Pine. I can't. It's Charizard and Charmander.
You can't even do him like a Charmeleon?
Now when Sam Hartman's over here looking like this.
I know, it's his fault. Shouldn't do this. His fault.
Oh. He shouldn't do that. And let's throw away the Louisville tape. We know the 8 interceptions or the 8 turnovers, man, all that crazy stuff that happened.
Water under the bridge, man.
The past.
Sam had to do all this hard stuff in that Wake Forest offense here. Got Tommy Reese. You got an offensive line that's returning an All-American and could be another All-American. On the other side of that thing, he's going to be protected like he's never been protected before. Young receivers now. Imagine being a young receiver at Notre Dame who just got now while it's last year. Listen, again, I don't have any hard feelings about Drew Pine. I wish him well. He played really good football down the stretch of the season, battled his ass off. But it was an offense that basically subsisted on throwing the ball to All-American tight end Michael Mayer and then figuring the rest out. Now you've got a bunch of these young receivers that are going to have an opportunity to catch passes from one of the most accomplished quarterbacks in ACC history. It's incredible. This automatically raises the roof on what Notre Dame can be potentially capable of in the 2023 season. I'm excited to now let my expectations get wildly out of control here, Brandon. This is incredible. Ooh. I feel great.
So Notre Dame's going to have a quarterback that could potentially be a top 5 quarterback in the draft.
Well, let's not go that far now. He is a bit undersized. I think was predicted to be a late round prospect, which is part of why he's coming back for all this one. But potentially in an offense that's got more pro concepts in it, could play his way into more there, and we love that journey for him.
All right. Let me back up, because you said wildly. Let me back it up. Let me pull it back. Okay. It's great that Notre Dame can finally have a quarterback that's going to get drafted. That's going to be good. That's going to be great.
That is going to be great. We hope you enjoyed this podcast experience as much as we enjoy welcoming one of the future bachelor candidates into the Notre Dame football program. Ooh. Yeah, don't forget that Wake Forest pipeline there. That thing's real. Sam Hartman's got a future in there if he so chooses that. You've got a future in downloading, subscribing, rating, and reviewing Gojo wherever you get your podcast, leaving us a 5-star rating and a review. Remember, leave Brandon in the reviews advice on potty training toddlers so he can get right this upcoming week. Make sure you check out the DraftKings YouTube channel as well and the Gojo with Mike Golick Jr. page underneath that. Thanks so much. Have a safe weekend. We'll talk to you guys on Monday.